Welcome. My name is Tom Lanier. On a popular sci-fi series based on a novel, we heard the popular mantra of the scientific community, "We don't believe in God, we're scientists." In the past, knowing God's existence was a given, even among scientists like Isaac Newton, Einstein, Kepler, Boyle, Lord Kelvin, and Michael Faraday. Today, it's unpopular to admit to believing in his existence. Today, it can be mocked and discredited for admitting it. This video is dedicated to all of you involved in research and content creation surrounding archaeology, paleontology, geology, and UFOlogy. I'd like to challenge all of you with some framework that will tie all your research into a nice, neat package that can begin to answer a boatload of questions you yourselves have had a tough, if not impossible, time answering. And I'll explain why it's been tough for you to answer your own questions. I've been fascinated with your scientific disciplines all my life. The one thing that has always frustrated me is that I have never seen anyone tie them all together. Never. So that's what I'm going to do in these videos. I'm going to tie them all together. The thing I've found in common with all the videos, books, TV documentaries, etc., that cover these topics is that they tend to start the book or video with questions and unfortunately end with the same questions unanswered. Rarely do they answer their own questions. It feels like clickbait. At times I've wondered if these disciplines actually want answers or if they're like some of the health organizations that seem to not want to find a cure because if they do, they'll be out of a job. I understand that many, if not most of you, are well-meaning scientists or content creators, but I also know there are some at the top of these disciplines I'm addressing that know the truth that I'm going to be discussing in my videos, yet they don't want the rest of their colleagues to know what they know because the truth would upset the cart that's been kept secret for a millennia. There are powers that be that keep this in check. You may be thinking, another conspiracy theorist, but I encourage you to listen for a few more minutes because I believe what I'm doing on this channel is unique and needed, and I'm hoping that if you agree and would like to help spread the truth about our history and heritage, then it will be worth your time. Okay, so who am I and what authority do I have to be speaking on these subjects? I won't take up time on this video to explain who I am. You can watch this video here to get that answered. I will say this, though, that my foundation is based on biblical facts and the support of other trusted texts such as the Book of Enoch, the Book of Jasher, the Book of Jubilees, and trusted historians that lived back then. I will explain why we can trust these books and their authors in another video, but in short, God says it, I believe it. We have archaeological evidence all around us of how everything that has been stated in these books have been proven to have happened, and more evidence is being uncovered now in an exponential manner that is showing even more. There's also a lot of evidence that's now being suppressed, like at Göbekli Tepe. There are truths there that they don't want to be uncovered. So since what is true of the past can be proven and believed, then it suffices to say that what is stated in these books that foretells what is to come can also be trusted as well. This evidence is what I'll be bringing up in many of these videos. I am not here to defend the Bible or the existence of our Creator. The Bible doesn't need to be defended. I am doing this for your sake so that you will see the facts before you and hope that you won't resist the truth simply because academia has taught you something else or that you fear being ridiculed, scoffed at, or rejected by your peers and communities. Hey, I understand that this can be financially and psychologically catastrophic for many of you. I'm not taking that lightly at all. I respect the work you do and appreciate it. You've done a great work for humanity. I just want to help you see the truth that's been laying before you, yet hidden in plain sight. Many, if not most of you, know that there are many in your communities that are closet believers for fear of being ostracized, but love their work and their contributions. If enough of you come out, then you can help create a majority that can be recognized for believing and promoting the truth instead of a false narrative. I'm simply here to connect the dots from the truth that already exists. Do you want to know the truth or keep ignoring it for the sake of your career and the camaraderie that you've built up during your lifetime? If you need to, you can pause the video so you can ponder that question and or ask your maker to reveal the truth to you. I understand it's important. Since you're still with us, I'm going to assume that you want to know the truth, or at least are curious about what I'm going to say next. Here are the topics that I alluded to earlier that I have never seen tied together, yet they are intrinsically tied together. I will be connecting these dots in my videos. These are loosely in historical order, the way we were taught in school and beyond. Our origins, we were taught about the Big Bang, dinosaurs, Neanderthals, civilizations, megaliths and giants. We weren't taught about these in school. Pyramids, Nephilim and demons. We weren't taught about these in school either. UFOs and space aliens. We were not taught about these either. Who runs the show on Earth? Whoever has the gold makes the rules. There's more to it than that, which I'll get to in another video. I'm not going to go into great detail here about our true historical timeline. That's for another video series. But this is part of the foundation of the truth that will allow us to tie all those topics together. And if you choose to come along, then you can be part of this and teach others the truth. The timeline that academia has taught us has an elusive beginning. They want us to believe in a Big Bang, but they can't put a timestamp on it. The Big Bang is based on chaos, but it can't have existed because, for one, there is no order in chaos, yet our universe and everything in it, including us down to our smallest particles, are in complete, magnificent order. Do you agree? To get to the point, the one thing that brings all these topics together into a nice, neat package and helps make sense of it all is the timeline. I know that may sound odd, but here's why it's true. When you have an elusive beginning with no timestamp on it, such as a Big Bang, and you assume that our future is elusive, possibly indefinite and not guaranteed, then you have no beginning and no end, so your theories and hypotheses on where anything belongs on the timeline can expand or contract at will. The only events that you can track are the known dated ones. That is, the ones that date themselves on documents or we are able to timestamp with certainty and proven evidence. I've noticed over the last few years that with every new dinosaur that's discovered, its age keeps getting pushed back further and further into the millions and tens or hundreds of millions of years. Is someone dreaming that up, or are they relying on unreliable carbon dating for this? I always wondered if they just dream that up so they can be noted as finding the oldest bones, or maybe just for the wow factor. Here's an in-depth video that explains why we cannot depend on carbon dating. For one thing, in many, if not most cases, the results from carbon dating must be adjusted to fit the narrative suited for that test. That's manipulation of the test results. If it was accurate, it wouldn't need to be adjusted. If you adopt the timeline I'm about to present, then all this time stamping becomes a cinch, and you'll have no use for the unreliable carbon dating tests. With this timeline, there will also be no need for using the term prehistoric because we'll have everything within a documentable timeline. That's right. Our history, at least the superstructure of it, is documented and documentable, even the dinosaurs. Timeline explained. When we put our trust in documented past events, we rely on the witnesses of what that era transcribing those events, or at least a transcription from trusted scribes who had reliable narratives passed down, and preferably more than one source confirming these narratives. Since we do, indeed, have such documentation from several reliable sources, we can rely on their testimony and safely place their events within the timeline provided. Some of the sources that are most commonly known are the Bible, the Book of Enoch, the Book of Jasher, the Book of Jubilees, the Seder Olam, and the Dead Sea Scrolls. Other trusted ancient sources include Josephus. We also have accounts of many of these ancient events passed down and documented by many different cultures around the world. Many of these have been warped over time to fit their cultural narrative, but the foundational truth can be seen within their stories. The worldwide catastrophic flood of 2269 BC, or 1656 AM, is a commonly accepted event among most major cultures. The flood divides the line between the known and the seemingly unknown timestamps, since the mainstream method of timekeeping back then among timekeeping cultures was to associate the year of an event with the reigning monarch. This was in part because of the homage given the monarchs. Unfortunately, this created some ambiguity and uncertainty at times, since these lines were sometimes intentionally blurred, like in the case of the Egyptian kings and pharaohs. They oftentimes attempted to erase the previous monarch's existence from the records and inscriptions, even if it was their own father. Since our current system using BC or BCE or any combination of newly invented acronyms to avoid the attribute to Christ counts backwards, it seems to solve the problem for modern man to date our past, since modern man doesn't know about or want to ascribe to the following timestamping method. Fortunately, the books I previously mentioned have all dated events based on the beginning of time. That is, from the first day of creation. This puts what I call our historical dividing line, the flood, at 1656 AM. For those who don't know, AM is the Latin acronym for Anno Mundi, which is translated as the year of the world. These ancient books actually place the flood specifically at IR 1656 AM. Why is it important to know the exact date? Because there are many prophecies that were given by God to Adam and Enoch that relate to near future events for them and progressively further out events, so to prove that these prophecies are from God. He gave us specific dates and timelines for these events because He's the only one who can make these things happen with such accuracy. The point of accuracy is also so that when the observing audience sees these occur, they will have no excuse not believing that He is who He says He is, our Creator. It also lends credence to whatever else He's told us in the Bible, such as who Jesus is and why you need to know. All the prophecies in these books have come true up to our point in this time, so we can be assured that the future ones will also. They involve all of us, so wouldn't you be interested in learning what they are? If you want to be notified of future videos, subscribe to this channel and click the bell. You know the rote. I also have links to many of these books so you can read for yourself. Now that we've established that the beginning of the timeline was 5,949 years ago as of the recording of this video, and that our Creator knows what is yet to come, wouldn't it be safe to assume that He also knows the end of the timeline as well? I understand that no one wants to think that there's an end to our timeline, but there is, and I'll explain. There's actually an end and a subsequent new beginning. When I was a kid and I heard that to God 1,000 years is like a day, and then I learned that there will be an end to this current existence as described in the book of Revelation and other places in the Bible, then I thought, well, maybe our week is a picture of his millennial plan for us. Maybe his plan for mankind is only 7,000 years long before he does his makeover. Fast forward in my life, and I learned that that's exactly what he has in mind as recorded in these books I've mentioned. Without going in detail on that at the moment and explaining what is coming next according to these prophecies, I'd like to get to my point right now for your sake regarding God's timeline and the evasive timeline discussed earlier that the science community typically adheres to. Since we are proposing a 7,000-year closed timeline, then how do we squeeze all the dinosaurs, pyramids, the flood, and UFOs into this extremely short amount of time? First of all, we dismiss the Big Bang and we accept a 7-day creation. That's a week of 24-hour days, not some other time cycle. It doesn't make sense for God to establish a 24-hour cycle at the beginning of his creation and call it a day and then base the creation timeline on some other cycle and call them days as well. He is not a confusing God. He created order and showed that right from the beginning. Then God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. And God saw the light, that it was good, and God divided the light from the darkness. God called the light day, and the darkness he called night. So the evening and the morning were the first day. Genesis 1:3-5. This is his very first act of creation. He established the day and night cycle, so the rest of creation and the entire 7,000-year timeline would be on track. He laid the tracks for history to run reliably on it, from the boarding station called Alpha to the destination station called Omega. This life is not about mankind, it's about him, the Alpha and Omega, the beginning and the end. We are participants in his story, and what we do with our time here is up to us. He's given us that choice whether to accept the truth about him and his son Jesus Christ or dismiss it. The reference books I've mentioned show us the timeline. One of the easiest ways we can follow that timeline is through the genealogies. The Begats show us a reliable timeline of the pre-Diluvian world, and then we continue to follow that timeline after the flood. The same man that built the ark before the flood is the same one who got off the ark after the flood. He and his family saw both worlds, and he carried man's existence and genealogies through the first global reset called the flood. God tells us in the Bible and other documents that there are 2 more global resets yet to occur. I'll get to them in future videos, but rest assured that God promised that there would never be another global flood. Noah witnessed and lived in the amazing tropical earth that God originally made and the devastated landscape that followed the flood. We know there were crocodiles and palm trees at both poles and everywhere in between before the flood. They've excavated dinosaurs in the Antarctic. All land creatures had to start over after the flood. We'll talk about dinosaurs in a future video. I'm not going to explain all the archaeological anomalies and connect all the dots in this video. That's for future videos. This video is just to set the stage for future videos by establishing the timeline and hope that you who are in the sciences will seriously consider adopting this timeline, especially in light of what I reveal in future videos. I assure you that when you do and you accept the historical activities that took place within that timeline, that it will begin to answer many of your questions and mysteries your fields of interest face. How? If you'll accept the facts given to us in the texts I've mentioned, then we know where and when which people groups were where on the earth, and often why. Sure, there's a lot of unanswered questions in there, but we can connect the major dots, and when we do that, we can begin filling in the gaps logically and reliably within reason. Otherwise, when you make new discoveries, when you uncover new civilizations and new baffling artifacts, then you'll have a tough time knowing where to place them on your expanding timeline, which says, were these people alive 5,000 years ago or 5 million years ago? Roll the dice. Fit it into your preferred narrative. Example. I'm not going to do a deep dive here with examples, but here's one example we can address that's a hot topic right now, and that's regarding Göbekli Tepe and the other 20 or so ancient buried cities in that region. Since we've accepted here in 2024 that we are just 5,949 years into our earthly existence, then it's impossible for Göbekli Tepe to be 12,000 years old. Here's another thought. How do they figure that one dinosaur is 1 million years old, yet another is 250 million years old? Guessing or carbon dating? Here is a video that shows why carbon dating is unreliable and can't be trusted. The link is in the description section below. How is it that they've found dinos with soft marrow and some still have their last meal in their tummies? It's because these creatures aren't as old as archeologists have been taught to believe. Where have all the bones gone from millions of years of humans and animals existing? We should have an earth littered with bones, yet we don't. So where are all the human remains and animal remains from the flood? There were a few million people on the earth at the time, along with all the animals. Answer? Fill her up. Why did God upturn the earth and bury the flora and fauna so deep during the cataclysmic flood? Simple, yet more than one answer. First, since Noah and his family and all the creatures on board the ark needed to come back out in a year and repopulate the earth, does it make sense to have a rotting, stinking landscape to attempt to live in and move around in? No. That would be disgusting and unlivable. We are the beneficiaries of God making things topsy-turvy during the flood nearly 4,300 years ago to bury all that death and rot, whether it was living creatures or plants and trees. The oil, gasoline, plastics, and other products we use today are derived from our ancient ancestors' existence. We call them fossil fuels because no one wants to think about human remains in that goo as well. That deep space down in the earth is more like a common grave for all pre-flood land habitation. A second reason God buried them so deep is because it's stated in the ancient texts that mankind and the Nephilim experimented with and polluted every living creature on earth. So God needed to bury all this pollution and make it inaccessible to future generations as part of the first Great Reset. A third reason, somewhat based on the second reason, is that God didn't want future generations having access to the genes of the deceased and recreating the things that existed before the flood. God told mankind not to mix things together. In other words, hybridizing. Think X-Men. Think satyrs and centaurs. Think mermaids. All of these have actually been found in the fossil records, preserved as proof of their existence. Unfortunately, there are those who are attempting to bring these back along with dinosaurs. Think Jurassic Park. Not a good thing. There was a reason all these became extinct, and man's fascination with these creatures are going to get him in trouble. More on this later. One last topic to discuss in this video, but I'm not going to do a deep dive here on this either, as I'll do that in another video series. That is the topic of UFOlogy. How does that fit in with all this? Is it even relevant here? It exists within our universe and it exists within our timeline, so yes, it's relevant. First, we must establish who these creatures are, where they came from, and why they're here, and what they have to do with our timeline. Again, without a deep dive, I'll cut to the chase. In the creation events, God makes a point that there was nothing in existence in our universe before he created it, barring the creatures we call angels and the domain called heaven. But he created them too before he created the rest of the universe so they could witness his creation. He also shows us that his complete attention was on the earth, so much so that his son, Jesus Christ, was sent to the earth to die for the sins of those on the earth, then rose again the third day, and then after 40 days he was seen ascending into heaven. That's intense. The creator of all that exists in heaven and earth sends his only son to one planet to live and die for that one planet. There is no hint of any other planet or peoples or their need for a savior. There was no need for another habitable planet. He only needed one place to raise a multi-generational host of people to be with him throughout eternity. Since people live and die and most natural resources are regenerative, there's more than enough room here to accomplish his plan. It's perfect. So who are the little green men? They are the watchers mentioned in the Bible and the ancient texts. Personally, I don't believe they originally looked like this. I believe this is their current state after being cast out of heaven after their rebellion, or their appearance is merely a ruse. Before the flood, they disobeyed God by teaching men and women the sciences and all sorts of other things, including how to make weapons and war. They also procreated with women, and the offspring were the giants of old. We're talking gigantic giants, the Nephilim. I won't go any further on these topics in this video. These watchers are now collaborating with the global elite to create this new global reset, as the WEF calls it, and create the one world government that will usher in the end times. If you understand the plan, the long-term plan, then it all makes sense and you can accept the timeline I've presented. Roughly 6,000 years for man to try to make things work on his own, then 1,000 years for Jesus Christ to reign and show man what he's truly like in person. That's the 7,000-year timeline in a nutshell. After the 1,000-year reign of Jesus Christ, as stated here, he'll obliterate the universe and start over with a new heaven and new earth with him at the center of it. It'll be glorious. Choosing to believe an ever-expanding universe with ever-expanding ideas doesn't change the facts. And the more time marches on, the more facts are being uncovered. God has kept the best stuff for last as proof to the last generations that he is who he says he is, so you'll believe who you need to believe to be with him who he says he has been all along. For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whoever believes in him should not perish, but have everlasting life. For God did not send his Son into the world to condemn the world, but that the world through him might be saved. John 3:16 through 17. To learn more about the gospel, follow the link in the description section. So until the next episode, take care and take Christ.